The one thing most people get wrong about budgeting. If you've tried budgeting before and it just felt confusing or overwhelming or you didn't even know where to start, this video is for you. I'm going to show you exactly how to run your personal finances like a business. Carol and I are using Artisan Money for this part, but there is a free spreadsheet in the description you can use to follow along if you want. Step number one is you want to get a piece of paper and a pen, and you want to write down every single account you have. So any kind of credit card or bank account, student loan, car payment, mortgage, anything that gives you a transaction for a given month, you want to have that account written down in front of you. After you have that list done, you're going to go through every account one by one. And if you're using Artisan Money or something like it, you can add an account by clicking the Add Account button in the upper right-hand corner. A little modal drops down, and you can go through a little like a little wizard to help you add those. If you're not using Artisan Money, you can just go through that list and individually for every account, log in and download the transactions from that account for this current month. Broadly speaking, budgets are split into two separate categories. There's an income budget and an expense budget. Expense budgets are what you're typically going to think of when you hear the word budget. So all of your expenses go there for any kind of expense. Gas, groceries, rent, those will all have their own budgets, expense budgets. Income budgets are just where your, for example, your paycheck, or if you make any money from stock market, any income going in, you'll have a budget for those. So for the two different types of budgets, income and expense, you're going to, I forget where I'm going with this. If you're not sure where to start for the first time, I'm going to include a list of budgets, either in the description or probably I'll just overlay it here on the screen. You can use those to get started. Right now we're looking at Carolyn's business, so her budgets are a little more business oriented. Typically, if you're using this for personal finances like I do, you're not going to have like 5 or 6 different income budgets. You'll probably have 1 or 2 for your paycheck. If you're using Artisan Money also, there's a little chart on the left-hand side of the screen that Carolyn actually helped me create. She gave me suggestions for, where basically you can see the breakdown of your expenses kind of in a eagle's eye view, so you can hover over it and see you're spending, way too much on something or not enough on something else, or how it relates to other expenses. You can do that for both expense and income budgets, so it's kind of a helpful way to also view where your money's going.
So I'll kind of show you what Cody is talking about and how I applied it as someone who has much less experience than he does, as far as like being organized and managing finances and having that software engineering brain. I went to art school, so I needed it to be laid out in a very simple, preferably visual way. So for my business, the income is pretty inconsistent every month. My biggest chunk is usually AdSense, and that's different, and so is affiliate marketing, and so are sponsorships, and so it's different. So I do have recurring expenses that are fairly the same, but even then I might spend a different amount on my video editors, and sometimes I'll hire another contractor, like sometimes I'll hire a drone photographer or videographer to help with some of my videos. So what this really helps is I kind of have seen a baseline since doing this since June, so for like the past 6 months, and then having like a planned tab of like for how much I think I might make and how much I think I might spend, and then seeing the actual. That's really helpful too, and I just make sure to never spend more
Than you're making.
than I'm making. Maybe 1 month I might, but for the most part I don't.
Also, budgets are not something you should beat yourself up over if you go over them a little bit. It's not a big deal. They're really just there to help you kind of get a window to see where your money's going and where it's coming from. So if you go over 1 month or something, it's not a huge deal. You're just trying to get a window and a feel for what you're actually spending. So the reason why we're using Carolyn's business account with Artisan Money is because, generally speaking, your personal finances can be run like a business. That's really the best way to do it. And so where we're showing her business expenses, it's kind of a great way to show you that the same principles apply to both personal finances and non-personal finances.
So for instance, for November, I guess I kind of overestimated. I was thinking it'd be more like 10K for income, but it was more like 7.5K. But I also overestimated on the expenses, and the expenses were also lower than I thought. So I could see that at least I still had cash flow. And that way I know if, say the next month I want to spend extra on maybe a drone videographer, then I know, well, I can afford an extra $500 because last month I made $1,500. So little things like that's really helpful, and just being able to see my expenses in like this pie chart is just so satisfying, where I could just see it in a glance, especially as like a visual learner person.
You can also click on that if you want to. If you're having to order something, you want to see the transactions. With Artisan, you can click on that and it shows you the transactions in that budget, which is also something you suggested.
Yes. And if you're doing this for personal, like if you're managing either just for yourself and you have a full-time job, you probably won't use this income pie chart as much. For me, it's really helpful just because I have so many different income streams in my business. But for you, if you have a full-time job, probably not as much, but you'll really like this expenses part, because then you'll be able to see how much you're spending each month per average on different things. Like maybe you didn't realize you were spending so much on eating out or shopping, and you see that maybe that's going into your cash flow. And if you see, me eating out a lot is hitting my cash flow, then maybe you'll want to make a change there and start cooking at home or something.
The other thing I wanted to mention is the whole purpose of budgeting is to try and plan your expenses for the future so you can kind of navigate life, really. So budgets help you plan what's going to happen and see what actually happened, to kind of compare the two. So if you're planning to make, an extra $2,000 a month in cash flow and you end up with $500, you know that you probably need to adjust what you're planning for so you can more accurately plan how to spend your money. And that's really the whole point of budgeting this way, is what's known as the cash flow style or the profit and loss style. It's basically running your personal finances like a business. So instead of trying to budget every single dollar with a zero-based budget, or there's 50, 30, 20, you've heard that before, the cash flow method tends to be much more just easier to use because it encourages you to save as much as you can while not beating you up for missing your budgets. Okay. So it's at the end of the month, you've analyzed your cash flow, and now you're not sure what to do with the cash exactly. If that's the case, I've included a free flow chart in the description of this video that'll kind of give you some guidelines or suggestions as to what to do with that money and make sure it's the most well spent. I think we're done.